This is the Heavy Boots Podcast, the space in which you can feel all your feelings. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about people. Friends, family, strangers, acquaintances, all the people we interact with in our lives. It's a big one. Let's get into it. When I think of the word people, I think of two things. I think of the song from Funny Girl with Barbra Streisand, and I think of the magazine, like People magazine. And the song from Funny Girl is one that I always fast forward. I would fast forward through it. And that's awful to say. But at the time, I was in my teens, my middle teens, 14, 15, when I discovered that movie, if I remember correctly. And I just thought it was very whiny and very needy, that song. I just remember that as a child. I was still a child, teenager, I guess, but I just was like, oh my God, here she goes again. And so I loved every other song in the whole musical, but that song, everybody loves that song. Most people, that's their favorite. And for me, it just wasn't. And now, I have a much different look on it because, being an adult and realizing that was vulnerability and that she was, putting her heart on the line and all that, it's a little different. You see it so much differently. But as a kid, I just remember going, oh my goodness, no wonder she has problems with men now. And that's awful, that's like, what was I thinking when I was that young? The messages we get through life, it's funny. And so that was awful of me to think, but I was so young. I was just like, oh, she's whining again. And it always made me uncomfortable when people sing to another person who doesn't sing at all. I don't know if that makes sense. So in musicals, when they're singing to each other, there's this balance and this rhythm together. And she's just singing that to him. He's not a singer. Does he sing in there? I don't know. I can't remember. I haven't watched it in so long. But I know in that song, he doesn't sing. And so she's just following him around the street, talking. Not talking, saying these words to him. And so I don't know why, but that always made me feel uncomfortable because I know when anyone's ever sang to me, unless it was a really, special moment or whatever, and nobody else was watching, then it's fine. But whenever anybody sings to you and you're in public, I don't know. And I know this is a fake movie and he's on the street. There's nobody else on the street and she's just singing to him. So I don't know, but I just felt nervous for him. Oh my God, how embarrassing, I guess. And that's also, it's also very sad. But anyways, so I always think of that song, people who need people are the luckiest people in the world. And there's something to be said for that, of course, because I think the human experience is not meant to, be done alone. So I do think there's merit and truth to that song. And then the other thing I always think of is People magazine. I always, whenever there was a magazine drive, happening where people needed fundraising or whatever, I would always get the People magazine because to me it was really well-rounded and it wasn't I don't know how it is today, so I'm not quoting. I don't even know how it was back then, but for me when I was younger, I just wanted to see, what's going on with the stars or whatever, and it felt a little bit like they were nicer to them, they were in on it, the celebrities were in on the stories instead of just the tabloids mocking them and all that, which I don't know if that's 100% true because I have heard there are some stories and people that aren't at the mercy of the person, so I don't know. I have no idea. But People magazine, it was just you could see everything about music and television and movies. And then, of course, little glimpses of, celebrities' amazing life, lavishness. And you could dream about it. And yeah, I don't know. I just loved People magazine. And then they started doing the Sexiest Man Alive thing. And That's kind of silly to me, but I do like those memories, of like if we went to a vacation or whatever and there was a People magazine in the lobby, or actually more so in like the doctor's office, and you're like, I have to sit here while my parents are in there or whatever. Then I'd be like, oh, that's okay. They have People magazine. Sweet. It was just a more well-rounded magazine. So I always would gravitate towards that. But People magazine, we like to watch people. I don't know. I have spent so much time in life just, sitting at a Starbucks or a cafe or a restaurant and just people watching and just, paying attention to interactions and moods and energy and clothes and hairstyles and, the different dynamics. It's just so much fun to people watch. I think most of us do that at some point in our lives. The airport, train station, you're bored and it's like, what else is there to do? And it's just interesting. It's so funny how different everybody is, and I mean, that's the beauty of it. That's the whole point, right? So I just always think it's funny how we observe, Like I was noticing the stray cats this morning, and they don't really observe like we do. They observe in a whole different way, but they're not like, if I go out and do something, they don't give a care, And if somebody else were to go out when I'm outside, I'd be paying attention to what they're doing. That's just, I don't know. I don't know if that's attention deficit disorder. No, I don't know. I always, am curious about what's going on. And the cats, sometimes they'll be curious, but it's like more so what, they're birds and only if you're going to get in their area do they worry about you, It's like, nope, stay away. I don't want you to come get me. But it's just funny, as people, we observe and we interact and we can talk and communicate and then we can botch all that up too, because we're humans. So there's so much to talk about in this. I started writing it down and I was like, well, maybe I should have broken it down, but I'm not going to. I'm just gonna move through it, and if there's anything I miss, I'll put it in the podcast later. So in my logo for Heavy Boots, I have it as friends, family, strangers, and acquaintances. And I actually spelled acquaintances wrong, which is hilarious because I've put that logo everywhere. And I pride myself on being a scholar of English. I love the English subject, grammar and all that. So I was like, oh my goodness. But I just left out a C. So it's ACQUAINTANCES. But I left out that C at the beginning. So I'm going to leave it because it's the truth, It was what I did, and I think it's funny, and you still know what I'm saying, and so it's a little character to it. But I just was like, whoa, I spelled that wrong. But so in this, bit of space that I've created for this, basically I think I was just, putting down our human interactions, the list of the human interactions, and I think that's pretty much all of them. Friends, family, strangers, acquaintances. Yeah, because there's not much else out of that realm. So if I miss anything, I do apologize. But I think that kind of covers everything. And it's about people. To me, it's funny that I don't have a little thing on my boots about animals, because I have done a whole podcast on animals, or gardening, but I love animals. And so I was thinking how they're my friends, family, and sometimes acquaintances, like the pig that lives on the hill, or, the deer that come by. We don't really know each other. No. But so this is just people. So, even though dog is man's best friend. Cat is my best friend. I'm talking just about people. So I'll start with friends. And so friends, to me, it's just someone who is there for you. The best friends are the ones you could call at 3 a.m, the ones that, if you're on the side of the road and there's nobody else to help you, they'll come, And so they're hard to come by, but I do have a few that I know I could call, and they don't live really close, but, they'd be there. So it's good to have that in your life. And it's also good to be that friend. So a lot of the times it's like, what do you want in a friend? But it's also, what should you be for that friend? Because if you want what you're not willing to put out, that's not going to work either. Does that make sense? So like if you have a list of these things you want from a friend, they should be at, every special occasion that you want them to be. They should, I don't know, be there, talk on the phone all the time, write cards and letters. They should be there at 3 a.m. They should this, and this. If you have a list of things that you just want someone to do for you, and then when it comes to them asking you and you're not willing to do the same things on the list, I think there's an imbalance there. And of course, it's not always going to be the same, because everyone's different. And so the needs of one friend will not be the same as the needs of another, but there should be a nice balance. That's where I've had a lot of issues in my friendships, is that it's either, I'm doing too much for someone, or they're doing too much for me, and then I feel guilty. There's just like a lot of communication that needs to happen, and a lot, the friendship to me is just like love. It's just like any solid relationship. It takes work, and it's not always fun. And I think there's friendships that are. So there's different realms to me. So if there's a ride or die friend, someone that you're with, forever, that you really have had a relationship with for a long time, usually it's because there's trust, respect, honesty, kindness, and there's a nice balance, and that's awesome. And then there's another type of friend where it's like, you know what, we don't have to do any of those things at all for each other. Let's just go have fun. And then you're just always having fun, and it's never like getting into that heaviness, There's some friends like that. And then, I think that's pretty much the two realms, the friends that you would, do anything for, and then the friends that you just see and have fun with, but like you're not invested in each other's lives, like, in the ups and downs. And that's perfectly fine too. We need all kinds of people in our lives. I don't have a lot of friends, and that's something I've talked about on here before. I feel like I say that, and what I mean is that I don't have a lot of friends that I do stuff with continuously, day to day. I do feel like I have a lot of friends out there that if I needed something, like I said, I could call on them, and if they called me, I'd be there in 5 seconds too. It's like a silent understanding. And then sometimes I'm like, I hope they understand that. Like, I hope they know they could call me. And so I continually try and tell people that, remind them, hey, I'm here for you. Because so often we assume things, or assume people know, how we feel or what we would be willing to do for someone. And then, they don't know, and then they're stranded, and then you're like, why didn't you call me? So, just being mindful and telling someone over and over again, that you're there for them, it's important. I think that it's really important too in this certain day and age. There's a lot of solitary moments. There's a lot of, it depends on the person, of course, but there's a lot of, what am I trying to say? There can be some isolation, and there can be some detachment. There's been COVID for like 4 years now. No, 3, it feels like that. 3 years, where people get sick and then they have to stay home, or, people I think what happened too is people went inside, had to, because of quarantine, and the world got a little scary, at least for me. And it was harder to come out, to come out of the shell and go back to regular life. And so I think that there's a big need to, check in on people and make sure they're okay. I just really, really worry about people's mental health. And, there's just so much that comes into us that, I'm so grateful to have been brought up in the 80s and 90s. I'm so glad I was born in the 80s, because we didn't have, when I was forming my mind and my heart and my brain, when you're growing up and you're forming everything, I'm so grateful that I didn't have all the stress that the young kids have today. Like, they get all the information that we never got, of course there was stuff back then that was happening, but it wasn't so readily available and so in your face and so, something that you dealt with every day and had to navigate through. And so I'm so grateful that I didn't have that. But in this time, in this age, even people my age and older, just seeing the drastic change in the world, and there's the argument that it's not drastic, and it's way better than it was in my era. Certain generations will fight you on that, but to me, it's to each their own. So whatever someone feels is their right, and if they're feeling overwhelmed by this, or their circumstances are low and depressed and have anxiety, those are valid circumstances. And so I just want people to check in on people. I think that's also another thing that's a good friend. And I've had it done to me. Like what I said before, I wrote some poetry and it was a little dark. And so someone, was like, "Are you okay?" And it, at first you're like, "Oh my gosh, you're being ridiculous." But, I could have been spiraling out. And so it was really kind that they checked in on me. So I think mental health is a huge thing. And it's kind of why I do this, because you can get stuff out, get stuff out, and then hopefully help someone to see things a different way, or to see themselves mirrored back and feel not alone. All kinds of things. And then also too, to those who aren't struggling with anything, and I mean, those are few and far between these days, but to those who feel that they are not struggling with any mental health, or that they got it all together, that's amazing. And what this can do for you, though, is to see a perspective of someone who has a lot of mental health issues, has a lot of hurdles and a lot of thoughts and a lot of things that keep going through my mind. These things that I can share, you can hear and know that other people, might be having these kinds of things in your life. Sometimes we get so one-track minded or what have you, and it's okay. It's just, it can happen to where you think everyone thinks the way that you do, or everyone is going through things the way that you do, and it's just not so. There's just so much different colors to every life. There's so many things that are evolving and changing, and and also just knowing that a 20-year-old right now is not what your 20-year-old self was. If you're in your 60s, that was 40 years ago, and the world looks so different then. And yes, there were their own problems then. And that's the other thing, is to realize that just by someone in their 20s saying that they're struggling right now, that doesn't negate that you had struggled too. You know what I mean? We all have struggle, and it's just right now is theirs. So just to honor that, And sometimes it sucks because you didn't get the honoring you should have, And so that's not great, but to me, I would rather pay that forward, you know what I mean? So even if I didn't get what I needed, I'd rather then give it to someone else than to just be well, I didn't get that, so you don't get it, if that makes sense. Like if someone, really needed someone to say, I understand, like when I was young, there was a few times in life where it was just like, I wanted someone to say, how are you feeling? Or, are you okay? And because I didn't get that, I do that for a lot of people now. I try to check in and do that for a lot of people. And so to me, it would do such a disservice to the world if I just continued that pattern of not giving what I didn't get. You know what I mean? Because we can correct these patterns by changing how we interact in the world. And it's often based on what we didn't get because we see the need. Does that make sense? I don't know. I get passionate about this stuff because it's, the time is now to help mend the disservices that we've had in our lives. And a lot of them are no one's fault either. So that's the other thing is like, blame and pointing fingers. It's all about education. It's all about who was taught these things. And so if they weren't taught, and then, just the circle of life, if the person didn't get what they needed and then they didn't give it to their child, then that child maybe won't give it to the next child, And so it's just like figuring that out and then not passing that burden down over and over and over again, Let's correct that here. So that's why I think sometimes I'm like, well, maybe I should have a kid because, there's like, you have a chance to be a little bit better. That's the whole point of generations to me, I think, is like every chance you get to be a little bit, not every chance, every generation knows more, learns more, grows more. So, sometimes I'm like, oh, I probably would be a good mom. I think I'd be a good mom. I do. But it's just like, there's so much else that stops me from that journey, which is fine. And it's valid. But it's just, it's just the chance to try it your way. You know what I mean? Like, oh, well, maybe I could try, my parents had more than my grandparents had. And now I have more. It's just not, knowledge and I don't know, kindness, empathy, and time. Like, it seems to me that like time, and that's not for everybody, but I know like in my grandmother's era, there was no time to sit and talk to the kids and see how they were feeling. There was just no time. And then when my parents were having us, there was more time, but there still wasn't that much time. It was like, go to work, go to school, just make a living or what have you. And then now, I'm doing a podcast, so there's more time. There's more time to talk and like, I don't know. There's like a different way about life to where it's not just so grind. I think there's like a notion of like slowing down, just like, I don't know, taking more time to be mindful and to, fill up your cup. There's like this idea of nurturing oneself that really wasn't around much, 100 years ago. It was just like survival. And so now survival is met a lot, and there's circumstances. Not everybody, has the time. There's still people that are having to take 3 jobs. The times are hard or what have you, but there's definitely an idea of, nurturing oneself that I don't think, my grandparents had. But anyways, I got way off topic there. Basically, I was just saying there's so much going on these days. And so if you can check in on your friends, just to make sure people are okay, and family too, just to check in on the ones that you don't hear from, because sometimes it's hard to say you need help. Sometimes it's hard to tell people that you're in a real dark place, and a phone call, a text, sometimes it'll snap you out of that. I've had that myself where I've been, in a dark, depressive spell for a few weeks, and then someone sends me a message, and maybe at first it doesn't help, but to know that they're like there just kind of slowly breaks you out of that, you know? It does help. Like, we're so solitary, you know, in nature as humans. We come here alone and we die alone, what have you, but all along the way, we're surviving by the love of others, like, constantly. Like, I can't think of a better way to put that. Yeah, like, I credit a lot of light coming into my life from other sources. Like, we don't always make our own light, and so that's why we have the lantern holders for us in life, and our little lighthouses of joy, pockets of joy, bringing us back from the fog. So just friends, check in on them. Yeah, and most of my friends are pen pals. I hope to see them, you know, soon. We write long letters, lots of cards, notes and things, and I have friends that I just have messages with, and I don't do a lot of talking on the phone. I mean, I talk on the phone all the time to my mom, sometimes to my brother, but yeah, so I love mail. I just think it's so cool. Like, I hope that the post office stays in business, because, I mean, this digital era is great and all, but to hold something in your hand that someone else put time into there's nothing, for me, there's nothing better. So I will always be the card sender and the letter writer. That's just who I am. My grandma passed that down to me. So let's dive into family. This one is such a complicated scope of, you know, all kinds of things. Family is, you know, where you start, and it is definitely interesting, you know, how a family can shape someone. And it always trips me out how, when there's a big family, or there's even just two people in a family, you know, like two kids, they're totally different people, you know. And it's funny, like, the perspective on what went on in the family, you know, as you're growing up, and trials and tribulations and all that. It's so funny to have the same conversation, you know, talk about the same thing with two different family members, and you get completely two different stories, you know, or two different perspectives. And that always boggles my mind, because it's like, we're coming from the same place, you know. Like, I mean, we're all born, you know, and then we are formed by our upbringing, you know. And so when you share that with someone, it's like, wait a second, how are we not the same? But, you know, if you're born years apart, or, you know, just, there's so many differences that you just see things differently. It's just, you can be in the same house and have a completely different experience. And that's really kind of interesting. Like, I keep saying interesting, but it's very cool. It's very, you know, sometimes it's frustrating, because you're like, just see it my way. This is how it went down. And it's like, no, that's not how I remember it. And so that can be frustrating. But when you look at it from, you know, the mind of curiosity, and just how the person was formed before that moment, you know, how each person was formed up to that moment changed the way that the moment looked to them specifically, you know? So it's pretty interesting. And the way that each are treated in certain circles, or, you know, realms, and I mean, even gender can play a part, and I don't know, just age, and then all the different things that are going on in the dynamics of the family. It's just, you know, it could be a million little things, a million different little things that shape a person. And so what we pick out of that family basket is different too, you know, like what we choose to take. Because sometimes there's a notion of, I'm going to continue with this legacy, you know, this is this is good. I'll just keep on going this way with tradition and what have you. And then there's other family members who are like, oh no, we got to change this up. Let's do this differently. And so that can create, rifts and just different perspectives. So family is a funny one. There's so many facets, and it's, there's just so many different ideas about family too. Like, in some cultures, the parents will then live with the children after the children have grown, and not like when they're elderly either. Like, it's like everyone just lives together, and that's always funny to me. And then, like, I just think about, again, I always go back to the stray cats, is like, they're just, mom has the kiddos, and it's like, see ya, pal, survive. I showed you, I gave you 3 weeks of how to survive. Now go survive. And it's funny because sometimes in human life you see that, unfortunately. And so there's a lot of, what do you call it? A lot of growing up and parenting on your own, like you have to figure out, how to self-regulate and things like that. And so, and self-soothe, like, that's always been a thing, is like, just to understand that you can actually have the power to make yourself feel better. Like, because when you're younger, if you're crying or you're sad or something scary, or, there's trauma of some sort and you don't get what you need, then you can feel like, you're never going to heal in that spot, if that makes sense, because you're young. And so someone should come and comfort you, and so as you get older, if that has happened a couple times or what have you, at least for me, then I had trouble self-soothing. And so that's where depression came in, because it was like, I don't know how to, tell myself that everything's going to be okay, And so, yeah. And so, like, and that could be from anybody, like, because my parents were great at making us feel safe. But there were certain other times where we didn't feel safe, and it's just, anger and all kinds of circumstances. But it's also other people. So, like, as you're a little kid, there's just other people that too can contribute to your safety. So if you think of someone in a certain light and they show you the opposite, and you're young and impressionable, that's scary, because you're like, I thought this person was one way, and so just little things that can put you on edge, and just but the self-soothing thing was something that I found I really needed to learn, especially in the last 5 years. It's just like, even when you have a family around you too, like, you still need to self-soothe, because nobody can be there for anyone all the time, And so, like, these incidents that happened in my life, I was by myself, and it was so scary, and it was so triggering of my feelings of abandonment, And so, and there's physical abandonment that I had in my life, for sure. And then there was emotional abandonment that I had in my life. And then, and then just this, there's, as a woman, I don't want to get too crazy about stuff, but I'm being honest, as a woman, you get looked down on in a lot of ways, like, for, your intelligence can be questioned far more than a man, at least in my experience. And then your emotions can be questioned a lot more than a man. Unfortunately, a man doesn't get to have his emotions a lot of the time, and that's a huge disservice. That's a whole nother topic. Like, men should be able to freaking cry and feel and not have to put on such a face. Anyways, so just so you know, I'm not a male basher. This is not about that at all. I'm just saying that because I love men. I love men, and there's so many good men. That's all. Like, I know there's a lot of bad stories and things like that, but there's also a lot of bad women out there. And yes, the ratio might be in the men's favor. And I don't care about any of that. I'm not, I just want to make sure you know that I'm not bashing men when I say these things. And I just love people, and there's good people and there's bad people, period. All right. So when I'm saying these things is that I have felt that I come up with the right answer and it's still wrong because I'm a woman, and they'll go, oh, no, you're probably wrong. And then they go through it and they go, oh yeah, that's right. That kind of thing. Or I feel something about something, like I feel really slighted by someone who showed me one side of themselves and then all of a sudden, did a 180, and now they're this whole other person, and there's all these secrets and this lies, and then I was told, well, oh, you're making that up, and it's like, and me being upset was just dramatic. So these types of things, and then like one of my weakest moments in life is when I was poked like a bear by a relative, and then I said that they were a drama queen and they love drama and all this, and it was like, whoa. And I still, I apologized and I tried to make it right, but I was just like, man, you said the thing you hate, you said it to that person, and regardless if it's correct or whatever, like I'm not saying that because, it was heated and it was a moment, but I'm just saying that there's certain things you don't want to perpetuate a stereotype, and so there's other beautiful ways to say things. It's kindness, basically, is how you should talk. And so, back to the family, it's like communication is so important, and where I lack is, there's so much guilt of things I should have done or didn't do, or, just, also too, just like circumstances where it's like, we never talked about it. And so now it's like in the back of my head, but then do we just pretend like nothing happened? And it's like, it's just such a hard thing because family is like forever, right? And so, it would be mindful, I guess, to just pretend like it never happened if it's going to create a hard conversation. But then at the same token, it's like in all of these practices, I'm very mindful, and I want to be like, I want to catch up with myself, if that makes sense. I want to fix all the things, so that we can sit there and there's nothing buried in the backyard. You know what I mean? Like no skeletons in the closet. Like, but with all these little resentments everybody has, it's so, I just feel it all, and I have many, and I work on them constantly. But I also think too, there's something to be said about honoring yourself, and it's really hard to feel good about yourself when you don't have your family around, for sure. Okay, so I have strained relationships, and it doesn't feel good. But there's also spinning your wheels, trying so hard to feel good in spaces that you just don't feel good in. And it's not anybody else's fault. That's the thing, is like, I don't want anyone to feel bad for my stuff, ever. Like, that's just not what I want for anyone. I don't want anyone to even be thinking about me, honestly, because it just, I hurt so much, and I don't want anyone else to hurt. But there are times when you can't be somewhere where you're gonna feel bad. You know what I mean? You can't. There's one mode of transportation where you can just show up and, like, put your feelings aside or what have you. But I don't have that mechanism. I wish that I had it. And it's not like animosity feelings. I'm talking about, like, I feel uncomfortable. Like, I feel like I've got all this stuff that I haven't said and that is festering in my head. And it's like, when it's even brought up a little bit, it's too much. And I just always feel too much, like I just feel too much. And so, and then, then it's also too like, okay, well, I haven't done this or that or the other things that I'm upset about, ashamed for. And if I go now and go there now, are they going to bring that up? And am I going to have to, defend myself or explain myself or put my head between my legs, put my, what do you call it? Put your tail between your legs? I don't know. But just that feeling of like, am I going to have to cave in so that it can all be better? Because I haven't figured that out. I haven't figured out how to completely own everything. You know what I mean? Like, in a real way of like, because I know nothing in family, honestly, like everyone's doing the best they can. So like I literally, and I'm usually not thinking about the past. Like honestly, if there's anything that's hurting my heart, it's in the last few years or whatever. You know what I mean? Like the past, the way past, that only comes up if someone else brings it up for me. I don't go back that far. Like I just don't like, of course, I'm formed by all those things or what have you, and maybe it'll come up in, like therapy or what have you, and it'll be like, oh, that's why I do that, whatever. But it's like, that's not blaming anyone, and you really can't blame anyone for who you are in this moment, you know what I mean? All you can do is try and be the best self, and so that's where owning all the things that I've done that I think are so terrible, that's, and when you tell people, like when I tell my therapist or when you tell someone the things you think are terrible, it's like, that's so silly. Why are you holding on to that? Because a lot of those other people aren't even holding on to what I'm holding on to. And then I think they are, and then I'm going to go around them and they're going to be so mad at me. And it's like this big vicious cycle that keeps me by myself. It's just the truth. And so it's hard, and it's just something to work on. Like, and I'm just doing the work. I really am. I try to get stronger every day, because what you need is a little bit of a shield of confidence, of self-knowing. It's not to be some kind of a superhero that's going to kick everyone's asses, or like be so strong that no one can penetrate me, because that'll never, ever, ever, ever be me. That's just not who I am. I will cry at the drop of a hat. I don't care. And I don't care. Like, I don't. There's certain things I'll own now. And like, it still like bums me out when I'm crying in front of someone that I really admired and thought cared for me, and they don't flinch that I'm crying, like that's a whole nother ball of crazy. It's like, wow, and that just shows you stuff though. Like, so I got really upset when this happened with someone I really cared about, and I was like, wow, okay, so that my tears don't matter. And it tells you a little bit, and you learn a little bit, and it's not that you become bitter or cold. It's just that you realize you take that back from them. You don't give that to them, because they're not going to do anything helpful for you. And it's not, I know we're not here to just do everything for each other. I get that. Like, and I know that everyone makes mistakes, and sometimes people can't show up for you, and that's totally fine. But when it comes up repeatedly or what have you, you pivot, and you go, okay, this is not the person that I can be this way with. And it's hard for me, because I want to be a person that I'm just the same in each group. I don't know if everybody else has this, but it's really hard for me to show up the same way in different circles. Like, I feel the energy, and I shift myself like a chameleon, to make it work for everyone else. Like, that's just, that's just my conditioning. I don't know where I got that from, but it's like, okay, if I change myself in this circle, they'll be happier with me, and I just want to be one person in all the circles. I have not mastered that yet. You know, where you don't shift. I don't know. I think everyone kind of has that little personas in certain realms. And the ones that I see that I admire the most and that look so happy are the ones who don't do that. You know, you see them go through a whole crowd and it's not like stand up straight or hunchback. You know, like, I don't know. For me, it's like, I bet you if you took a video of me walking through a crowd of 100 people that I knew, I'd be different in not in every circle, but in certain circles, there'd be some energy that I want to make either okay or to run away from or diminish myself so they can feel bigger. And those are the dynamics, you know, in family too. It's, in family, it's hard because there's generations, you know, and so there's like, seniority and it's like, you should, you know, look up to your elders and respect your elders or what have you. And I have a hard time with that train of thought as well. I think you should respect anyone until given a reason not to. I think to me, it's best to start with respect of a life, of a human, for anyone. So family, stranger, acquaintance, friends, anyone that you're meeting or, well, friends, family, you know them, but I just think any human that you come in contact with, you should start with respect because they're a person and I value people. And so I start there. And then as things progress, you know, it could go up or down. And to me, the blind respect is the scariest to me because, you know, I will respect my elder, but not in vain. So like, if I feel that this isn't a mutual relationship and there's not mutual respect, I'm not just going to respect my elder because you told me to, you know? So, and that gets to be a heated conversation. People get mad at me, and I started with respect. You know what I mean? I always start with respect, and I give a lot of room for error, you know, because I know we're human, and, you know, and there's just it takes a long time for me to ever feel like I can't contribute to this relationship anymore. It does take a long time for me, especially with family, because it's like, oh gosh, we got to see each other. Let's get this right. Let's do this good. But if there's dishonesty or, you know, just, usually it's dishonesty that really, and inconsistency, for me, I just can't, that just makes me anxiety ridden to try and keep up with all the lies and try and keep up with, you know, the different ways of doing things. It's too much anxiety for me. I you know, because it would be, you know, circles of amazing time. So like a whole, you know, few months of fun, and then for whatever reason it turns into something else, and there's, you know, something that happens, and then it's that up and down roller coaster that is not respectful for others, because, you know, we just want to have like a steady stream of respect, love, honesty, and yeah. And then there's also that whole piece I think I've talked about before where people think that you're operating as they operate, and so then what you're saying must be a lie because they're lying, and all of that, you know. And, you know, people are complex, and I get it. It's just the self-awareness to me is huge, because if you're self-aware and then if you tell the truth, you never have to remember what you said, you know? But if you're not even aware that you're lying, you know, or you believe the lie so much that now it's your truth, it's just detrimental to so many things. And yeah, it's just the lack of self-awareness, because if you were self-aware, you wouldn't lie and you wouldn't create so much turmoil, you know? And that's the thing is family. You try so hard, and that's the thing that I'm trying to do, is to give myself credit where I've tried, and just to know my truth of everything. But then also the stuff that bums me out about myself, to own that it does, and then to own that it might not even be an issue anymore, but if I need to say something about it, to do it and then get over it. But I haven't come there yet. There's just been so much going on, and it hurts, but I do the little bits that I can. And that's the other thing too, is the two-way street thing. It's like we're all doing the best we can, and sometimes I hear nothing, and I know that it's probably because I give nothing, and that's fine too. But it's like, whatever somebody wants, and this was the thing, whatever someone needs, I should say, no one knows unless you tell them. So if I need to hear from my brother, well, then I need to tell him I need to hear from him, Like, these little things of, like, expectations of what someone should do can happen a lot in family. Oh, well, they should have done this, or they should have called me, or what have you. And, the should haves mean nothing. What's on your end? If you wanted to talk to them, then you should call them. Like, waiting for someone to call you, it's a game. And I think we miss out on that. We don't realize that that's a game. And, like, I've played it myself. Like, I'm going to resent them because they didn't do this, that, and the other. And I'm just going to sit here stubbornly. And that is totally a childish game. That is such a bad place to be. No, and then in family, you can make your own family. You can make friends into family, because a lot of people that don't have good relationships with their family have, like, a huge friend unit, you know what I mean? And created their own family. So, there's a lot to be said. And then there's other relationships that span years, and they can be your family. And the only thing I'll say there is that sometimes when it's not that you're blood related, it could be like a less than type of situation. Like, there's nothing more hurtful than someone, like, saying, now let's get a picture with the real cousins, and, like, pushing you out of the way. Like, and again, I'm just telling it as it is. I'm a feeler. And so, and those kinds of things just hurt. And so you just want to make sure you have tight bonds there. So then that won't hurt, because you're like, oh, whatever, they're just being silly. But, it's hard when you're not the blood related also. There's a lot that doesn't trickle down to you because, you're not in that mix. And so it's like, I want to be such a part of that. And then you get those feelings, of like, you're less than, you're not part of the family. You're just the neighbor or whatever. So, it's all about communication, and it's all about calling people on stuff in the moment nicely too. I can't even tell you the tough love thing that comes up a lot is like, oh, I got to tell it how it is or whatever. And tough love is my least favorite combination of words in the entire English dictionary. To me, it is just an excuse to be mean. There's nothing else that you're doing. Tough love means that you want to say all the stuff and you don't want to have to be kind, so that maybe it'll crack open something, in that person and finally get through to them, because the niceties haven't been working. And I don't think that it's ever a good time to be unkind. I don't think that much tough love has worked. Maybe here and there it's worked, and so people are, like, on that bandwagon. But from my experience, tough love just creates boundaries. And, and walls. And I just, if you can do anything, is try to just support with kindness. And then, yeah, in families and relationships and everything, just, bring up stuff as it comes up and don't hold on to it. And that's what honestly, like, I try to do that. It's hard though. It's very hard. But I think family is important. I think that, you do everything you can to try and keep those bonds in place. And I've failed in a lot of areas of that, but it's not for good, like, I don't think that any relationship can't be repaired. But there's a lot of responsibility to be taken, especially on my end, and I take it. So, but that's the thing is holding it on my end by myself is detrimental because it hurts, so I'll get it together. I'll make amends someday. It's just, like I said, it's like this double-edged sword of, like, I want to be strong enough so that I can get through the emotions and get through all of it so that we can have a better relationship. But then it's like you're wasting time trying to get strong, and it's like, I just don't want to get back to a place of where I feel real small, because I've been working so hard to feel like, someone that matters. And so there's just certain things that trigger me, and I'm aware and I understand. And so I just try and shelter myself, and I don't care for that. Like, I'm not saying it's the right answer right now, but I'm just trying to figure it out. And I think we all owe that to ourselves. So another realm of people is strangers. And this one is always, when I think of strangers, I think of stranger danger, stranger danger. And it was just a thing, I think, in the 80s or 90s. I don't know. It was just like, there were some kidnappings that had happened. So we did get some news back then. But so, there was a lot of talk of making sure your kids were in before it got dark and things like that. And, yeah. And so for me, strangers in my present life, I've had so much fun with strangers, like, so much fun. And so I don't know. I'm not very reserved with like, I'll say hi to people, and I get that. I think my mom says hi to, like, everyone when we go out, and she'll talk people's ears off. It's so funny, but they'll talk right back to her. So, but yeah, so, like, I'll always go and say hi to people, and, like, if someone drops something in the store, pick it up and give it to them, or, yeah. And then, but I'm also very mindful of my surroundings, and we were instilled in us when we were young to be really careful. Like, it was, I think it was a trip to New York City when I was like 8. Because my brother was a baby, and 7 or 8, and I just remember, don't make eye contact. Whatever you do, don't make eye contact. So it was funny. So from, like, an early age, to be aware of the surroundings, and that, there's different places that are, more dangerous than others. And then I always heard, nothing good happens after midnight, and then of course I went and walked Sunset Boulevard until 3 a.m. Because I was immortal, right? When you're a younger person, when you're in your 20s, you think, what is it? Immortal? I don't know what I'm trying to say. Nothing can touch you. There's another word for it. I just can't think of it. Yeah. And I had so much fun. So I was glad I didn't listen to that too strongly, because I would have missed out on a lot of stuff. But then at the same token, like, I stayed really safe because of all those things. To this day, when we go on a hike, I think of what my dad said is, if there's deer poop, I think it was deer poop or coyote poop, the mountain lions aren't far away. And so I'm always like making loud noises, making sure no mountain lions are coming to get me. I mean, we live in the rural country now, so it's just funny what sticks with you. But I definitely feel like I have like spidey senses. I don't know what else to say it, but like energy. So like a few years ago, my mom and I were at a restaurant, and this gentleman walked in, and as soon as he walked behind me, all the hairs on my body stood up. Like, I was just like, okay, no. And I don't know if he sensed that in me or what, but he came right over to me, and he was on something. Like, he was intoxicated, and he was trying to sit with us, and we were going to have lunch, but he was just very rude to the waitress, very rude to everybody, and then he ended up sitting in the restaurant farther away from us, I guess. But it was just one of those things where I told my mom, that guy's bad news. I don't feel comfortable. I don't know. And then it was the first time that she realized that I do have those feelings, you know, like I have energy, spidey senses. Because she was just like, oh my gosh, it came true. Like he was, you know, very abrasive and very confrontational, you know, and it was just energy that was like, just worrisome energy. And he turned out, I think he left before us, and we had a nice lunch, but it was just, you know, it just colored the lunch and made me on edge a little bit. But I do feel that there's certain energy that you can just tell what the interaction's going to be like. And so I just try and listen to myself, like, and I didn't for so many years when I was younger. Like, there were certain things where I just let it go. And usually I mean, I'm here, so it turned out okay. But as I get older, I just listen to that, because there's no reason to stay anywhere you don't feel safe. And yeah, so, but like I said, most of the moments that I've had with strangers, especially recently, have been fun. Like, there's so many things that, I don't know, there's just so much conversation, you know, and so many different ideas, and I just like to be open. So to me, strangers, it's that corny little saying is, strangers are just friends waiting to happen. And like, I mean, there was a time at a bar recently where my mom and I made friends with the mom and daughter, and I still have her phone number, you know. It's like that. I mean, it was like 2 hours of time just having fun, talking, and, you know, goofing around, and it's more fun, you know. Like, so to me, it's important to, of course, be mindful of your surroundings, follow your intuition. Like, if you don't feel safe, get out of there, and then be open, you know, because experiences don't always happen with everybody that you know, and you learn a lot from people that you don't know. So I don't know, stranger, I think because the word strange is in it, like stranger, it's like, ooh, I don't know, like Stranger Things, you know, like that show. Like, it's just a different word would be better, I think, because I don't think it's so scary. That's all. But I also think that you should be mindful. So it's a good balance, you know. And it's always funny for me to think of like how everybody that is not blood related to me was a stranger at one point, you know? So like, that's crazy. Like, we're all strangers until we're not. So pretty cool. So the last group I'm going to talk about are acquaintances. Acquaintances are like the people that you see often, but you don't know them at all. You probably don't even know their name. Or maybe you know their name, but you don't know anything about them. So like the lady at the post office, you know, I might know her name, but I don't know her, but we share niceties, and, you know, she's a good egg. Like, it seems like it. And then, you know, coworkers, neighbors, like anyone you see around that you don't know very well, but you're acquainted with them. You know where they live, or you know where they shop, or, you know, you met them once, whatever. And the one that, you know, makes it hard sometimes is coworker. So this has been a big topic in my life over and over again, is just what to do with coworkers as friends, basically. I think that it's really tricky to have really good friends and be coworkers, because especially if you started the friendship at the place of employment, so like if you become friends at work, then you're kind of tied into that at work, you know, and so it's hard to just stay professional, because now you have this friendship, and so the lines can get blurry. And if you're trying to move up the ladder at certain places, which I've done myself, it can get really tricky, because then you could end up being their supervisor, or, you know, just be in a place of more responsibility. And it gets hard to keep that line in check, you know, to keep it really balanced and appropriate. And so there's a new school of thought for me, if I ever go back to the workplace, like a traditional workplace, is that I don't think I would start friendships with anybody. I'd be more of an acquaintance, you know. We'd share niceties, and, you know, of course we'd have a relationship that's professional, so maybe a little bit more than just acquaintance. We'd be working together, but there's been so many instances where I've overshared, you know, or been honest with things about my life, and then they were used against me. You know, such as I played hooky one day, and then, you know, that person said, "Oh, well, she told me she was going to blah, blah, blah." You know what I mean? And that's not cool. And then too, sometimes you don't know, you think that you're friends, but you don't know where their loyalties lie. And so if you share information that would help them maybe to get on someone else's good side, you know, then the knife goes in the back, and then all of a sudden, you know, you're not respected as you thought you were. So all those kinds of things. Acquaintances, you know, they're people that, you know, I think every person deserves respect, like, until there's some reason not to give it, you know, and just kindness and niceties. And I have a bunch of acquaintances, I would say, that I send correspondence to, you know. So there's friends that I have like long pen pal relationships with, and those are friends because we know each other's interests and life story and all that. But then I have others that I've just met, and you know, there's some sad things that have happened in their lives that I know of, and I know that a card every now and then will bring them joy. And so I do that, but I don't really know much about their lives, you know, other than the little pieces that I'm, you know, I'm privy to. But I know most humans feel good about receiving something that says thinking about you, you know, and so there's a handful of people that I just do that for, you know, because if it was the other way around and I needed it, I would be so grateful. So that's how I think of it. And, you know, and I do that a lot, as I send a lot of correspondence, even to family that I've lost touch with or what have you. I get sad when I I not lose, but like they move away from where they lived and they don't give me their new address, certain family and friends, and it's like, oh no, that's how I got a hold of you, you know? And so that always bums me out. So if you're listening and you don't get correspondence from me, it's because I don't have your address. And yeah, I just love to do that. And so some acquaintances, you know, that I don't really know, but I just care about. So I guess maybe they're less acquaintances and more, no, I don't know. I guess you can care about acquaintances and just not really know the ins and outs of people's lives, you know? Yep. So anyways, people, you know, just all the people, all the different kinds of people in your lives. Like, I didn't even touch on everybody. You know, friends could be boyfriends, could be girlfriends, could be more than friends, you know, and then all the titles, you know, we have mom, dad, sister, brother, aunt, uncle, grandma, grandpa, cousin, sister-in-law, brother-in-law, mother-in-law, you know, father-in-law. There's so many like titles and little attributes that we have within all of these, of course, but I think it's all the same. It comes down to communication and honesty, and also honoring yourself comes in a lot, because in any of these circles, if you don't feel safe, heard, accepted, you know, respected, you don't have to continue on feeling that way, you know? So you either figure out a way to correct that within yourself and continue on in the relationship if that feels good to you, or you have to move on, you know? And so none of it feels good. Whenever there's something that comes up where it goes against your grain, you have to make a choice as to how to go forth, you know? And you can only change yourself so much. So as far as, you know, making it right for everyone else, that's eventually going to eat you alive. Just know that from my prior experience, is that if you are not being 100% yourself over and over and over again, you're going to burn out, and you will start to have self-loathing, because you're not going to be happy that you're not honoring yourself. You know what I mean? Like, you're betraying yourself. And so in any facet of life, I don't think it matters if it's family, friends, strangers, acquaintances, you know, if it's somebody who's high up in the company and they should be respected. If that doesn't feel good, you know, and of course it's not just like a lazy thing where you're just like, oh, this doesn't feel good to me, I'm gone, this is stupid. When you're mindful and you're self-aware and you're really trying with people and you really go forth, keep coming back, keep opening up the conversation, keep trying at things, and if it is still not working, you know, and I mean, I'm not saying you have to do that over and over and over and over and over again. I just mean, the first time you should give someone a chance, you know, to see if that is a pattern of behavior or if it was just a bad day. But if it continues to be the way, or it's just one of those things that's a non-negotiable, you know, like certain things that are said or whatever, doesn't matter. They don't need to say that twice. They say it once and you're done. And I don't want to say some of the things here, but, you know, racism or gender things or any of it, there's non-negotiables for you within yourself. And if that's one of them, then you move on right away. But if it's just something that's like, oh, this person might have been having a bad day, then give someone a chance again, and they'll show you quickly who they are. And, you know, we're meant to be here together. We're meant to learn from each other. And the thing about it is that you don't have to embrace everything. Sometimes you're meant to feel that, so then you know what you don't care for, you don't like, and you pivot and you move on to something else. It's like life steers you in all these ways. And so sometimes there's these notions that our feelings can be so sensitive and you can get too hurt, and and you're making that person out to be a monster when it's your feelings, and you should be able to control your feelings and things like that. That's not correct. And I don't know how else to say it. I don't know. I don't want to fight about it. I don't want to have to debate it. Feelings are honored in my world here. Feelings should be honored, and feelings tell you what is not right. They do. And yes, you should explore them, because sometimes you're having a bad day, and sometimes you're just projecting onto that person, something that's not quite nice to do to that person, because it's not about them. And so that's where you have to be mindful. And again, self-awareness, because we're all human, but you really got to recognize if it's within you or within them. Sometimes the combination of you and that person. So sometimes, that person can get along with everybody else, or everybody else can get along with them, or, what have you. But then the mixture of you and them doesn't work. And that's okay too. So you just have to kind of feel it out. And unfortunately, sometimes it can be, family, and that's really hard. And it makes things awkward, and it makes things strained. And the biggest thing is to do the work. If you can get to a place where you're strong enough to not be a crumpled mess when you leave an interaction, then you can get to a place where you can be around that energy, But if you're not strong enough, and that sounds like a slight to you, it's just overall self-knowing of what you can handle, Because we all reach breaking points, and we all do the best we can, but we also sometimes harm ourselves at the expense of others, because it's family, or because they're your best friends, or because, that's a stranger. I don't want them to think weird of me. They're, my boss's boss. I don't want them to think weird of me. And it's like, you don't owe anybody anything, You owe yourself integrity, honesty, respect, and you give it out, you give it to others. So you got to give it back to yourself. And that's the thing, is people often forget to put themselves on the list. And also to be open to people, to be open if someone wants to talk about stuff and be vulnerable with you. It's actually a gift they're giving you, and what happens sometimes is a person might get upset because you want to talk about something that's deep or sad, and they'll project it onto you as if you always talk about this sad stuff, blah, blah, blah. And it's just that they don't want to deal with their sad stuff, and that's okay. That's fine. But to kind of realize that within yourself, that, oh, I don't want to talk about that because it hurts me. Instead of making that person who's already vulnerable and a little bit crumpled up, that's coming to you, and telling them that their feelings are too much, you could just say, you know what, for me, I can't go into that, And that's the other piece of vulnerability, is to admire when someone shows up to you with vulnerableness, but then also to be vulnerable back and be like, you know what, I can't do that. And to be honest, I can't go there with you, And that's the thing too, is there's most of the time when we're telling people, labeling people or telling them what we think of them, or they're too emotional, sensitive, blah, blah, blah. It's anytime there's a too, you're too emotional, you're too sensitive, you're too judgmental, it's usually hitting something within ourselves. It's something we don't want to deal with, obviously, because it's too much. And so the wording of that makes it, a burden. You're making that person a burden to you, and that's how they feel as they walk away. And so just using some different language is huge. And that's what's so sad is there's so many people working on that in this day and age, which is amazing. But it's just so sad to me that in a lot of relationships, just simply saying it a whole different way, and it's easy. It's one different sentence can change the entire trajectory of that relationship, It just makes the person feel seen, heard, and understood, instead of making them the the pariah with all the feelings, And yeah. And it's just cool to be open to, because you learn from each other, and two people in the same situation can do things so differently and have different results, and so you can lean on each other to learn from each other, how to do things, and even how to look at things, from a different perspective. Dax Shepard and what is her name? Kristen Bell. They're married, and Dax Shepard has my favorite podcast ever. I love that podcast. Armchair Experts. But him and Kristen Bell would have a lot of friction in their relationship at first, and they couldn't figure out what, long story short is they wrote a manual for each other. So Dax sat down and he said, this is what I need, and this is what triggers me, and this is what, all the things. I'm sure they had questions that they put in there so that they each knew the same of each other. But when they were done writing it all out, then they exchanged it. And so then Dax was like, oh my goodness, so you need some time away from me, and I really enjoy time with you. And they learned each other, through a manual. And it was just so cool that they sat down and did that, because, wouldn't that be amazing if we all had a manual on each other? Then we could just realize that the things that trigger us, a lot of people aren't meaning to trigger you there, it's not, a lot of it's not intentional. It's subconsciously, and it's just kind of how we've flown through life up until that point. So when we meet somebody new with new needs and wants and desires and, different kind of understanding and all of that, how to navigate that, and how to, what am I trying to say? How to be prepared, because you can't. You have to learn as you go. And so many fights happen because you're learning as you go. And some people don't have the patience or the care to stick with it and learn someone, and then, not just write them off. And it's hard. It's not easy to love. And it's not easy to care. And, people are complex, and we're not always self-aware. Even though I talk about it all the time, I'm not 100% always self-aware. There's certain times when I look back at something and go, oh my gosh, I was getting upset because of this. Dang, okay. But I try and be self-aware, at least in the future, looking back at something, trying to learn so that I don't repeat the pattern, because who wants to fight with anybody ever? Unless maybe that's something fun, but not for me. I love harmony, and it doesn't have to be calm, there could be little debates. When we were younger, we would go to my Uncle Mike and Eileen's house, and we had the best debates. Godzilla or 50-foot who would win in a fight? Oh my gosh, now I'm lost it. Godzilla or a 50-foot fork? Is that right? I don't know. Somebody's going to have to correct me on that one. But yeah, but like anything, there would be debates, and it was like, and then the Cuban household too, it was like, loud, like, and I don't mind loud, it's just, is everybody okay? And usually you're all on board because you're having fun debating about silly things or talking loud about old memories. And so I'm not talking about fakeness. I'm just talking about everyone's okay. And then, feel safe and like you belong, It's kind of the two pieces needed, I'd say. But I think that the key to good people, which most everybody starts that way, we're all just babies, and so that's something to remember too, is like all the stuff that you're carrying, somebody else is carrying that, maybe more, not to compare, like that's a thing that we do a lot too, is like, oh, you had it way worse than me, or, oh, I had it way worse than you, so you don't even, those types of arguments, they just don't do any good, because your makeup and what you're feeling is all valid. Like, doesn't matter if it doesn't look as dark as another person's, it's what you're going through, and it's yours. So, and that only, when people say that to you, it only makes you feel less understood and like you don't matter, because then, oh, well, their experience matters more, and I should just shut up, And yeah, that's a real tricky, that's a little dangerous spiral to go down, because, we all have our stuff, and I can't say that back in the day was less hard than it is now, and I can't say, vice versa, that it was harder than it is now, because it's just different. So I just feel like everyone should get their piece and be kind, in kindness. Like, we should all be able to talk to each other nicely, like, honestly, like, even when you're getting into a debate or whatever, no name calling or no labels, it's just like facts and figures. And then, I don't know, just be nice. But people are meant to be all different too. So like, wanting everyone to be of your mind frame is not really the proper way of life, because we're all here and we're all different for a reason. If we were all supposed to be the same, we'd be robots, and we wouldn't have all of our different perspectives and ideas and inspirations, and just from the way that we get dressed in the morning is different, and there's so many differences, but there's so much that's the same. Like, the heart of everything is the same, the aesthetics and what you're into, the music you like and all that, that's all like the coat of paint. But the houses, they all have the same things, they all have doors and windows, and they shelter you, so we're all made up the same. We just have different ways we see things. And so we just got to respect each other, And it's so much fun to have different ways of seeing it. I don't know. I know it's scary sometimes to think of a different way or to do something that's not the way you've always done it, but it can also be really liberating, to try something completely different. It actually, like, you can feel your endorphins change, like, you become more. At least I do. Whenever I do something I didn't think I could do, and it's scary and I want to run away, but I did it, I always feel better, you know? And that's the truth about people too. Like most of the times the anticipation of meeting someone is more scary than actually meeting them. Once you go and meet them, you're talking and you're out of your head because you're just engaged, you know? Unless the spidey senses came in and their energy's dark or something, then it is scary. But 90% of the time, that's just not what happens, you know? Usually it's amazing to meet new people, and I really do love hearing about everything. Like, I have felt so many different times that people weren't really, they don't want to hear what I have to say. Like, I can feel, as soon as somebody has switched off in their mind, I can feel it. And I'm always like, okay, well, it was nice to talk to you. Have a good day or whatever, you know? Like, and sometimes it could just be like their energy changed because they're working, you know, and their boss came in or something and they got to go and you're like, oh God, you know, but I can always feel when the energy changes. So like, you know, we're having a great conversation, but then it's like, oh, okay. I usually like, you know, say goodbye or whatever. And it's funny because it's very rare for that to change the opposite way. Like, I will listen to someone forever. And like when people go on vacation or they went and saw a concert or there's a million different things in life, I want to know about it. And I really wholeheartedly want to know if they had fun. And I really wholeheartedly am excited for them. And I don't have envy or jealousy, you know? It's just like we all get to do stuff, some more than others. And to me, I really want to learn and know, what did you do? Did you have fun? Maybe that's somewhere I want to go someday. But really just if you care about a person, and they're in your life and you don't listen, there's a real disconnect there, because that's showing that person that they don't matter, you know? And like consideration for their time too, you know? Like, you know, just some people need more downtime than others, and it's just all learning each other, but it takes time and investment. And that's the thing that I've noticed in some people, is that there's not a lot of that done before expecting a turnover, like not a turnover, but like what am I trying to say? Like a turnover on investment, I guess. Yeah. So you have to invest in people in order to figure out, you know, how they operate, what they need, and all of that. And then of course they need to tell you, because, you know, we all should have boundaries and things. So it's not always just on that person, but most of the time it's just listening. And then you really can, oh yeah, he's really tired after work, I'm not going to talk to him tonight or whatever. Or, you know, he's working nights, so don't go over there and make a lot of noise because he's sleeping during the day, you know, those kinds of things. Just consideration. And again, it's just about investment, and a lot of people don't invest enough to know those things, and then they expect a lot in return, you know. And you gotta be good to people. You just gotta I don't know, come from a kind place, come from a place where you don't think everyone's out to get you too. Because I've seen that too, where everyone thinks, you know, or where someone will think everyone is just wanting something from them. And it's not always the case. And yeah, and you can get conditioned to then label everyone, you know, like a full label on everyone instead of taking each person for what they are. This is just a big topic, so I could talk forever, but I should close this up here. I just want to say that I think that people do need people, and that makes us very lucky. We do need community and people. I think there's a disconnect lately. just because of circumstance. I don't think it's our fault. Like, it, we had to go inward, and then some of us found it really comfy there, and then the world got scarier, and so we kind of, I don't know, it's just harder to come back into the scary place, to me. And again, I don't think the world is unmanageably scary. I'm just meaning that, like, it's a little darker than when we left it. When we had to go into quarantine, that was scary. And then it caused a lot of mental stuff that happened. And that created other, darkness in the world that I don't think we were prepared for. We didn't really know that was bubbling there below the surface, because everyone was just going about life. And, I'm not saying that nothing bad ever happened. I'm not saying that I'm not saying that no bad things happened before the pandemic. I'm just saying that it just seems that since and within, it was just a little chaotic, and it makes it really hard to trust and to feel safe, and and then the uncertainty of life. And I mean, there's just so much that I think about more than I ever would have, I think, if the pandemic never happened. So I just think that we just need to come together a little bit more, and then just try as much as you can without dishonoring yourself. Like, that's the biggest thing, is like, because you have to lay down at night on your pillow and you have to feel good about how you move through the world. So if if you don't feel good with yourself at night, what's the point? So just just try and listen to each other, and be vulnerable. It's really, really one of those things where people are like, I don't want to look stupid. And I've looked stupid on this podcast to myself. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I said that, like, a million times. So, and I'm no better than anyone else, though, just because I am vulnerable. All I'm saying is that it lifts you. It lifts something off of you. And it opens you up, It's just better to be honest with anything, And if you're struggling, you're struggling. Like, that's nothing to be upset about. I mean, it's frustrating and it's hard, but no one should be upset with you for struggling, And the ones who really got your back, they will be there and support you. So, yeah. And just, hug your people, meet new people, and never ever forget special people. Even the ones that aren't in your life like you want them to be, or, or people from the past that you're like, oh, probably never, get to hang out with them again, and you can get sad and feel nostalgia a little bit or whatever. But just feel all that, because it comes from knowing people. It comes from being a human, and it's what makes us so neat, because I wouldn't be here without all the people that I've met and taken little pieces of them with me, And I think about them all the time. And then the stuff that you carry that, hurts, and the stuff that you're working on, and though it's taking longer than you thought, and you don't know what to say, and all of it, it's okay. It's okay, I'm still standing, and I'll figure it out. And if I don't figure it out, oh well. That's what was meant to happen in this life, I'm doing the best I can. And that's the truth, So you just got to really dig into your truth. And then let all the other stuff lie, because It's hard. Life is hard. I love Taylor Swift's song. And there I go again, Taylor Swift. She says life is emotionally abusive in one of her songs, and I chuckled right away because it's so true. Life is a bitch. Pardon my language. That's why this will be labeled as explicit, because I've said a few bad words this time. But it is. Life is heavy, and this was a heavy one, and that's why it was so long. But I unpacked a lot, so my boots are going to feel mighty nice and light after this. And I appreciate you hearing my honesty and my craziness and my full scope of people. And that's probably not even a quarter of it, really, huh? There's so much more to people, but I think we did it justice. So with that, like I said, hug your people, love your people, and do your very best, Be good to people if you can. And if you can't, there's reasons, And just try not to hold on to any spite or anger, resentments. Try and work through it so that even if you can't be with certain people or, have to let people go, they're not living rent-free in your mind, Because it'll eat you up. I can tell you that. And it takes for a lot of work to untangle that. So, yeah. So, thanks for listening. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being a person in the world who shares this experience with me. And just know that all of this is, my best intentions. Like, I hope that's clear in this, that I'm not preaching that this is how high and mighty I am, is what I mean. Like, this is what I'm striving for, and I'm just sharing it. And if there's other ways, email me, I want to know. And Jenny Camille at simplegirlinspired.com. But I'm not the be-all, end-all. These ways that I'm talking about, there's a million other ways. So find the way that works for you. But just know that these are my vulnerable moments, and these are my thoughts and feelings, and this is what I'm striving towards. Like, if I make any of these statements sound as affirmative, they're just thoughts, to aspire to. So may you have a beautiful day. May you be around good people. Be vulnerable. Be honest. Be heard, understood, appreciated, loved, cared for, supported. And stay you. This podcast was written and recorded by Jenny Camille. The song that you hear at the beginning and the end of this podcast is called Treehouse by Andy Ellison.